Hello and happy Mother's Day here in the US for the second time. And actually, also, is it Mother's Day in Canada?
It is.
It is. And I think it's actually also Mother's Day in Australia. So, wherever you're tuning in from, if it's Mother's Day, happy day. If it's not, happy day anyway, just not happy Mother's Day. For those of you I haven't had the opportunity to meet, I'm Clarissa Constantine. I am founder of the Parent Tween Connection, where we bring parents together with each other and with professionals who can support them. And we also have the Parent Tween Foundation, which is our nonprofit that helps to bridge the financial gap that so frequently exists between families and the help that they need. So, Michelle, thank you for joining me today to help us with our kickoff fundraiser for Parent Tween Foundation.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Michelle, I've told you before, you're one of my favorite humans just because you're a kind, compassionate, just love radiates from you. And I imagine that part of that may have been amplified because of some of the experiences you've navigated having a kiddo who's got some pretty significant needs.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you take a minute and help us establish that? Because I know there's a lot of families that are going to be able to relate in some aspect to what you've navigated.
Okay. So I will start by going way back in time and tell you that
In the Wayback Machine.
Wayback Machine. I grew up with two cousins who had significant disabilities. So I've always been surrounded by people who are differently abled, who handle the world and engage with the world differently. My background as I grew up, I am the child of a teacher, and that's what I became. I became a teacher and then did a master's in special education and deafness, and then became a special education teacher because those kids just made sense to me and their families made sense to me. And I thought that I could offer them some support and guidance and all those other wonderful things. And then, oh gosh, I guess about maybe 4 or 5 years into my teaching career, my husband and I decided that we were going to have some kids. And that didn't work out quite the way we had planned. So 4.5 years later, and a lot of medical appointments, we decided that we were going to adopt. So we adopted over the course of about 7 years, we adopted two beautiful boys. Our oldest son joined us at 23 hours old, and our youngest son joined our family at, we found out about him, he was 2 weeks old, and he joined our family at 4 weeks old. So they were very, very little when we took them, and that completed our little family. And then we began the next big journey, which was at about 6 months old. I discovered that my oldest son wasn't doing all the things the books tell you your children should do. Mm-hmm. And that led us on another 4.5-year journey to discover the depth and the breadth of his challenges. They are big and they are all encompassing. So his challenges are physical, they are cognitive, they are emotional. You name a category and we probably have something in it. They're medical, some of them are medical. So he's got a lot going on, which is really kind of interesting because it was never my intention out of the gate to adopt a child specifically with special needs. Like I didn't go looking for that, but that's the amazing oldest boy that we have in our house. Mm-hmm. And that has led us on a whole journey to be both mom and teacher and to navigate that whole relationship with schools, mm-hmm. which mm-hmm. is so different when your child is not a quote unquote typical child. So not an mm-hmm. able-bodied neurotypical child, because there's so many other extra layers that we have to navigate. Absolutely. That other families just don't, right? Mm-hmm. So that sort of led us on this big journey to support and empower other parents who are on a similar journey, because no two journeys are the same. Correct. But to be able to help to really develop and forge those relationships with school so mm-hmm. that your child can have the best experience and be able to learn and grow both at school and at home in a mm-hmm. way that's safe and productive.
Well, and thank you for that. Like I said, Michelle, as we were getting ready, like you were going to describe that so much more eloquently and just more effectively than I ever could. I watch what you share about Mateo and the things that you've had an opportunity to share with me. And I thank you for that, because your openness definitely helps others. But one of the reasons that I wanted, or that I asked you to join me for Empower-a-thon, is I knew your background in education, so you could speak to it from the experience of the special educator, but then also it's informed how you've done this with your kiddo who has needs that are all encompassing. I know from what you've shared with me, but that the things that you've learned and that you support other parents in when their needs are that all encompassing also apply to parents whose kids' needs are not necessarily as profound or all encompassing, to keep using the same word. The things that you're talking about are going to apply maybe to a family that just got a diagnosis of ADHD, which is definitely a cognitive executive function physical presentation, but doesn't necessarily come with the same level of complexities that you've navigated. And so I know a lot of what you're going to share with us is applicable to folks who have lesser, quote unquote, all encompassing challenges, but are still challenges nonetheless.
You betcha. Nobody said this parenting thing was going to be easy. And if they did, they lied.
They were wrong. And God bless all of you who do have children. I don't. And I'm thrilled to have those of you who do in my space. So where do we even start? I know you had a couple of points specifically you wanted to make sure that we mentioned. Let's talk about relationships with the school first.
Sure. So ultimately, you know your child best at home, but we have to be really honest with ourselves as parents. Our children don't always behave at school the way they behave at home. So they
for
may
better
actually,
and for not better.
Exactly. I was going to say it may be better. They may behave better at school than home, or they may be behaving worse or very differently at school than at home. And it can really put parents and teachers at odds. Right? And it really does build a fence in between you. And it's so important if your child has really anything going on that you have those relationships, because we know this for a fact. If I have a relationship with you and we like each other and we feel pretty good about each other's company, if and when a problem comes up, it's so much easier to solve because we have that relationship, because I can say, I really like this person, or I can't imagine that this teacher would be so mean to my kid out of the gate, because that's not the relationship that I see with that person or that I have with that person. So looking at strategies to forge those relationships actually does both sides really good. It is so hard, and let me tell you, I've done this myself, to tell a parent bad things about their child. Their child's not succeeding, or their child is having acting out behaviors in the classroom, or your child is a bully, or your child is unclean. All of these are things I've had to actually contact families about as a teacher. And that is so hard because I don't know what response I'm going to get. Generally, it's not a good one. So forging those relationships means that if and when that comes up, it could just be something minor and we can sort it out in a 3-minute phone call versus it having to be something really big and awful. Now, having said that, there are things that are really big and awful, and not every teacher is going to be incredibly receptive. So kind of lay that on the line. But as a parent, there are some things you can do. So the first thing I would suggest is this. You need to manage your expectations of the teacher. No teacher can ever give your child the amount of love and attention you can. They have a ratio of 1 to 25, 1 to 30, 1 to 35. So they've got 34 other children that they have to try and meet their needs too. They cannot do what you do at home. So coming into a conversation expecting them to be able to behave the way you do, or to handle things the way you do, or to give your child 20 minutes out of every class for some one-on-one time may not be a realistic expectation. So we have to learn to manage them. So one of the things that I suggest to parents all the time, and I practice myself, is to prioritize my child's needs. What are the top things that my son really needs? Top 2, 3 max, nothing more than that. And then I create some suggestions, and I phrase them that way. Here's some suggestions of things that work at home, remembering that the person in front of the room isn't me.
Mhm.
So they have their own way of handling things. They may not like the suggestions. It may not work with their personality,
Mhm.
right? So come up with some priorities. What are the top 1, 2, or 3 things that would really help your child in that classroom or in that situation? Are there
Mhm.
some things the teacher can say, words that you use at home? Hopefully, nice ones. If they're not so nice, perhaps the teacher won't use them. But right, like if you've got
Perhaps.
some words or like things at home that you work on that maybe it's a
Mhm.
situation of you need to put your hand up. It's a hand gesture. Stop. And that's when your child recognizes, then that's great. Maybe it's, for
Mhm.
example, my youngest son does have ADD and was absolutely terrified to ask the teacher for questions. So one of the strategies we worked out was he would take his eraser and lay it on the top left-hand corner of his desk. And when she was walking around, if he had a question and she saw the eraser there, she knew he had a question. And she would just circle around and speak to him. Because for him to put his hand up and draw attention to himself, he's also very introverted, was something that just wasn't going to work for him. But that strategy
Mhm.
really worked. So he could
Mhm.
let her know that he had a question without
Mhm.
having to put himself on show, at least how he felt.
Right.
He recognized the signal enough to know, okay, I got it. When I'm circling around, she was very skilled. When I'm circling around the room, I'll just circle around and I'll stop at his desk. And I'm not
Mhm.
going to ask, do you have a question? Because I know he does. I'm just
I
going
already
to,
know the answer.
right, like I already know there's one. So what are we working on would be the thing she'd ask. And again, now he had the opportunity to kind of raise the question in a really safe way. It worked out amazing. Amazing. And she
That's
came up
awesome.
with that strategy. It wasn't me. I just put it
Mhm.
out there that this is a concern. It's one of our number one concerns. And she was like, got
Well,
it. Here's what I can do.
and what I like about that is that if you're in a situation where you can say, hey, my kiddo deals with X, Y, or Z, and I know he's never going to raise his hand, maybe we don't necessarily walk into the conversation with our own suggestions because we don't, maybe it's they're safe at home. They don't mind asking a question at home, but we know they're never going to ask in a classroom, right?
Mhm,
But if we can
mhm.
at least go in and say, hey, this is the situation, maybe they can come up with that kind of an idea because I'm sure it's not the first kiddo who's ever had a fear of raising his hand in class.
I'm sure he's not, and he won't be the last. So
Hmm.
again, when you have those priorities, 1 or 2 or 3 things the teacher probably can work into the time that they're with your child.
Hmm.
It's not super overwhelming. And chances are, if it's a need for your child, it's a need for somebody else in the room too. So that strategy can be applied to several kids in the room for the
Hmm.
teacher. The other thing that I always suggest to families is this: connect with your teachers. And I don't mean when there's a problem. I mean,
Hmm.
at the beginning of the year, one of the things that I do for my oldest son, who is functionally nonverbal, is he and I sit down together and we craft a card that goes to every teacher. Now, he's in grade 12 and we still do this. A
Hmm.
card that goes to every teacher, it has his picture on it. And that's because he likes to see himself on a card. So we put his picture on it, right? And in
Great.
the card, we together have crafted messages for the teacher, and it's from him. So it's in his words, the way I would imagine that he would say it if he had access to all those words. So we keep it really simple, but it's just basic information like, I love school and I'm happy to be in your class. Because again, who doesn't like to hear nice things, right? That's going to make a teacher smile. And now they're going to feel the warm fuzzies about your kid. That's a good thing, right? And then we go into different things like, I don't always understand what you say, but every question you ask, I'll say yes to. Please check that I understand. Because if you don't know that and he's nodding his head yes, you assume he understands. And that can lead to problems, right? So now we're heading off a few of them at the pass.
Hmm.
I also put in there information like, I misunderstand tone of voice and body language sometimes. If you're upset with somebody else and you speak to me in a tone that isn't happy, I assume I've done something wrong. But I
Hmm.
won't tell you. I'll go home and tell my mom, and she'll email you to find out what's going on. Because he can't tell me. He just
Sure.
comes very upset, right? So then they know that they can expect, sometimes out of the blue, emails from me just saying, look, he came home today. He was really upset. Did something happen? I just ask a lot of questions. So this prepares them. So it's not this big, bad, scary thing of a mom reaching out that, no,
Hmm.
uh-oh, now I'm in trouble. It's more, he came home, he was upset. You didn't see it at school. Oh yeah, right. She did tell me that we won't see it at school. So she's just trying to figure out what's going on so she can help him at home, right?
Yep.
Lots of times it's a total misunderstanding on his part. And so then we have a chance to help try and figure out what that is, right? So I put those things into the card and I send it off right at the beginning of the year, the semester, whatever it is. And I do that so that the teacher now has an opportunity to reach back, and they usually do. I usually get a thank you so much for that card. That's really helpful information. That will help me to work with your son moving forward. Now we've got lines of communication open. Right? Now we're starting to forge a relationship where I am being perceived as an ally and a support system from home, and they are now not feeling threatened or awful. The reality is sometimes we can be that parent. Now, having said that, rider on that one, sometimes you need to be. But if you come out of the gate for a small problem with a very big reaction, you don't really have anywhere to go from there. And what that does is it causes teachers and schools to say, I don't know about that woman. So now they're going to want to keep you at arm's length because they are concerned about your behavior, about what you're saying, about not being heard or believed, right? So trying at the beginning to forge those relationships early. I also believe in saying thank you. If my son comes home with something really cool, like he came home with something for Mother's Day, of course I send a note back. So I can send an email. We have a communication book, so I write it in the communication book, right? I can send them a card. I can do any of those things. I can pick up the phone, leave a voicemail. Thank you so much. That made my day. Again, those pieces forge the relationship forward. Right? And then I start getting things back, like in his communication book. Oh, he had an awesome day, or, he was playing soccer and he scored 2 goals. Well, he can't tell me that. So yay, thank you for sharing that with me. Now I get to be like, you did that? How awesome, at home, right? When we do those things, when there's a problem, and, we're raising kids, there's always going to be some kind of a thing come up.
Absolutely.
Right? When there's a problem, we now are better prepared as a group of adults to be able to circle the wagons around and for that child. Okay, let me see. I made some notes.
I was going to say that falls into, I know one of the commentary or one of the comments that you had mentioned to me is killing them with kindness. And I mean, clearly it's not killing them, right? But
I'm not trying to kill anyone.
Right? That's antithetical to the mission here with your kiddo. But going out of the gate and putting that kind foot forward serves in so many capacities. And I would argue even in the parent-teen relationship, it serves a multitude of possibility when the kids feel appreciated. When the parents feel, or when the teachers feel appreciated,
everybody does,
right from the beginning, it makes that communication a whole lot easier.
And I also let teachers know, like I said, I send that card. There's going to be times where I'm going to be reaching out because I truly don't know what's going on. Why is my son so upset? And I'm super sleuthing over here. Usually it's about nothing, frankly, but I need to ask those questions so that I can be sure. Because again, he's nonverbal and the potential is always there for it to be actually something. And then that's a different path for me to take. But at least this way, with those relationships in place, moving forward, it's just so much easier to sort it out. It's a quick phone call, a quick email. We're good.
Well, and that's something that I've long believed, both as a business owner and engaging with parents with, who have kids clearly, is that if you build your network before you need it, you don't climb up the pole to go bungee jumping or to, go zip lining or whatever without making sure that your safety mechanisms are all intact, right? And so what you're doing is you're creating that safety net, in this case, with the school. And you would do it, I imagine, in any other arena. If he suddenly decided he wanted to learn rock climbing, having a rock climbing experience for somebody who is nonverbal is going to be a completely different experience for the coach, right? Or if he has a job, if he's able to work or whatever, doing those same kinds of things to build that safety net before he needs it, before you need it. If you've got that in place, it makes navigating the tough stuff that much easier. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I'm firmly in agreement on that.
So then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to keep on going with the thought, but we're good.
I was going to say, one of the things I know you wanted to mention is strategies for helping the kiddos self advocate.
Mhm.
And I have to imagine, you saw that with your younger one in terms of putting the eraser at the top left corner of the table in order the desk in order to indicate that he has a question. How do you do that with a kiddo who's not able to say those same things?
Mhm. Um, well, you have to be pretty creative, and you have to. It's kind of like the great experiment of life. It's a lot of trial and error, just
Hmm.
like in any great experiment. There's a lot of trial and errors, a lot of errors. It's like the light bulb wasn't invented overnight. It was 1,000 tries before he got the one that worked. Well,
Uh-huh.
sometimes it's that in parenting too. Um, I think it's a few layers of this. It has to be age appropriate. So if your child is younger, then you want to keep it very simple and maybe one thing that they're working on. If your child has disabilities, then you got to take those things into account too.
Hmm.
So for my older son, um, we work on him letting people know at school if something has happened and he's feeling upset. That's a big deal for him to work on. He doesn't do it well anywhere. Um, he this is a real big issue. So it's we have to spend some time working on it. And a lot of it is just trial and error. Okay, try this strategy. How did you speak to him? Was it in front of the group? Was it by himself? Like, how did this happen? Was there images so that he could understand? Because a lot of things, in the teenage world are abstract. And when you have
Hmm.
a cognitive disability, that can be really challenging to figure out.
Yeah.
So, really back and forth, right? Like, oh, we've tried this and it works really well, but not that. So, I'll give you a really concrete example. My son is out on a work experience placement in a car dealership, and he's having a fabulous time. He loves it there. But he's having a real issue on two fronts. One is historically, he's always had another friend go with him. So, another
Mm.
student with disabilities who understands more. So, he relies on them to understand what's happening. And then they'll say, hey, come with me. And then they'll show him what he's supposed to do. And he's good, then he can do it. Now he's by himself, and it's scary. And I'm seeing some real behaviors at home because he doesn't want to go because it's scary and it makes him very nervous.
Hmm.
Big learning curve here for him and me and the work people, right? And now we're looking at, well, how can we create a communication system that's going to work for him at work to be able to communicate with the people there. And so that's an ongoing thing. We have a big meeting coming up on Friday to sit down as a group and sort of powwow this together and come up with ideas. And so far, they've been asking me what we normally do, and I'm asking them about what they do, and hopefully we can come up with something. So that's one real life example that I'm living right now,
Sure.
right? Where
Right.
it's big, and we have to sort of figure this out because the car dealership wants to hire him. And so if we can help him through this little piece of it, it'd be an amazing outcome, right? For my younger son, it is that he's shy. And so, things like he was invited to try out for the rugby team, and he was very excited about it. But it required that he had to go find a teacher and ask for information. Now, he has ADD, so there's some organizational pieces to that are a bit overwhelming for him. But then it's a teacher he doesn't know, and he has to go ask the question. So I emailed his classroom teacher and I said, I have told him to come and ask you. Please let me know if he does. Like, that's it. We're advocating for this. We're working on it. And he didn't. I got a few no's that week. Nope, never came. Nope, never came. I'm like, okay, okay, okay. And every day we sort of followed up with it until he found the courage to get up and ask. And there was a lot of as he's leaving the car, I'm saying to him, do you need me to text you at lunchtime? When can you see this teacher? Can you go now? Yeah, but I just want to go hang out with my friends. Can you go at lunchtime? Yeah, but can you go after school? Really just you're picking a time. Do you need me to text you to remind you to do it? Yeah, that might be helpful. Right. And I had to build him up for a couple of
Mhm.
weeks actually before he asked about it, but he did it. And then he found out that wasn't so big, bad, or scary. Right. But it
Right.
required a lot of back and forth between the school and I over something so simple as asking for information about how to sign up for rugby.
And I'm going to do a short plug. The conversation I just had with Lorraine Connell from the company called Peers Not Fears. She's huge on leadership. And we were talking about The comfort zone is in the middle. Then we have your challenge zone and then the panic zones. So clearly for him, going and talking to the teacher or asking a question of a teacher whom he didn't know put him in like his panic zone, right? As evidenced by the fact that it didn't happen for some time. But what you kept doing, coming back in to tie into what Lorraine was saying, is you kept considering different ways that we could pull him back just enough from like challenge to panic, right? Just inside the challenge zone, far enough that he could actually go do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the more he does that, the easier it's gonna feel.
It expands your comfort zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, it's hard, and I will speak to any parent here whose kid, whose child has had these struggles. It is hard and heartbreaking, and you just want to go in and do it for them, right? So that they can keep moving forward. But I want to just clarify a couple of things. There used to be the helicopter parent who hovered around their child and was like trying not to let anything bad happen to them. And now they have a new term. It's called the lawnmower parent. And they get in front of their child and they mow down any problem before their child ever gets there. Now, to be clear, there are a lot of days that I totally want to mow down people. Like,
I bet.
Right? This is hurting my child. My child is struggling. I don't want to see my child struggling. Every mama bear instinct I have kicks in. But it is really important that we teach our children how to work through the struggle, because that arms them with skills that will do them so well for their entire lifetime, right? Because we all have troubles that we have to go and sort out, difficult people we have to go talk to or deal with. We all have stuff that comes up. You're like, whoa, I don't even know how to handle this. And you need to take a step back and take a breath. The good news is most of us as adults have a range of strategies that we can try. Our job is to teach our children to develop their range of strategies.
Right.
And so it means that my child suffered for 2 weeks. The little guy, he suffered for 2 weeks about this rugby thing. Like, he really did. It was very overwhelming for him. And it was hard. And he struggled with it every day. And it was hard to watch him do that. But when he finally went and he came back and got in the car that day and he was like, wow, I got the information. You know, that teacher's actually pretty nice. I'm like, thank God. Right? He had his success moment. And that's what he's going to remember. He'll remember that it was hard, but that he did it.
Absolutely.
Right? So now it's not going to be as hard the next time. It won't take as long. Is it going to be perfect? No. Is it going to happen overnight? Probably not. Right? Maybe it'll take 7 days instead of 14.
Right.
But every time we go through this, every time he works, and now I can also say to him, remember, you did that before and it wasn't so bad. What can we do? How can we do this? How can we come at it that's going to help you be really successful? Because that's what I want him to think. What can I do? What can I try? Right? And
having done it before, now you can tie that back and be like, hey, when you went and you had to talk to teacher so-and-so about rugby, what did you do to help yourself in that moment so that the next time he's feeling anxious about talking to somebody he doesn't know, he can pull on those skills. If we can articulate those skills, it makes it easier.
So much easier. And so now he's learning to do that. So there are going to be times we have a middle school system. So he's in the last year of middle school. He heads to high school next year. And so we're trying to arm him with lots of strategies because there's going to be a whole new system in place. And he's going to be dealing with lots of new teachers, not just the one all day. Right? So we're really working on that. And I really encourage parents. And again, I get it. Life is busy. It's often overwhelming. We have so many things that we have to handle that having the presence of mind to really think this through, because it usually happens on the fly, can take it right out of you. So don't beat yourself up if you don't do it all the time. I'm not perfect. I most certainly don't do it all the time. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, for God's sake, I'll email the teacher. Fine.
Well, and that also speaks to me, like what I'm hearing you say, Michelle, is that there's an intentionality to it with both of your kiddos, right? Clearly they have different needs. They have different aspects of support that you need to actively participate in. I mean, just from a verbal, nonverbal perspective, right? Your younger one is verbal and is able to at least get the words out from a physiological perspective. Whether he can do it from an anxiety perspective is a different conversation, right?
Mhm.
But being intentional about, hey, here's what I see coming, and here's how I can prepare for it, gives me more capacity to support my kiddo.
Yep. And ultimately, our job is to work ourselves out of a job. As parents, that's our job. We're supposed to work ourselves out of a job. They're supposed to be able to become independent, self sufficient, self reliant, happy, productive people. That's the end goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, I don't want my children living at home forever. I want them to be independent and strong. I do. So taking the time now to focus on it, even though it's not easy, even though it's time consuming, even though it's not at a good time, like I'm totally running to this meeting or that meeting. As I
Mm-hmm.
said this morning, my oldest had a total meltdown. I was
Mm-hmm.
on a Zoom call and all of a sudden he's right beside me giving me the finger on screen where everybody can see it. Right? There
Oh,
you go. And then the boo, hand sign, boo, and he's saying it really loud. Right? So here
this
I
is a
am.
heck of a time to choose to be verbal, my friend. Or
Yes.
not to choose to, that's probably not the right way to put it, but to be verbal. This is not the manner in which I would have preferred.
Nope. Right? And it is Mother's Day, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, now what? Now how do I do this? What do I do? How do I handle this? Right? Because it's not at the times that are super convenient. So for all the moms and dads out there listening to this, I feel you. I
Mhm.
do.
I
We
know
don't
you
have
do.
to be perfect. And
Mhm.
I think it was you, Clarissa, who talked about the third. If I'm strong and steady and stable a third of the time for my children.
Mhm.
Oh, it wasn't you. It was a lady I was talking
Mhm.
to about resilience and
Mhm.
building that. And she said, you don't have to be perfect. Just a
Mhm.
third of the time, get it right.
Mhm.
That's enough. That's all your kids need. I'm like, I can hang on to the third. Right?
There's definitely been times when you're like, if that's the one thing that I can hang on to get me through, then I might have a chance.
Yeah. And recognizing too that it's not perfection we're looking for. Our kids are not perfect. We're not perfect. We're all like flawed human beings. Teachers
Mhm.
are not perfect. Schools are not perfect. We have, if you come from a position of acknowledging all that, then
Mhm.
whatever muck you're in, you can imperfectly figure your way out. And our job as parents is to just keep supporting our kids. So
Mhm.
again, I am not advocating for people to be a lawnmower parent. In fact, I'm
Sure.
advocating that you put your lawnmower away. That's what I'm saying. Put it away. We need to let our children struggle a little bit in
Mhm.
safe ways that we
Sure.
monitor. And if you've got that relationship with the school, you can actually tag team it.
Mhm.
Right? Sometimes they'll bring something up with me. I'm like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do at home. And they'll say, well, here's what we're gonna do at school, and we can tag team it. So now
Mhm.
we've got the same language. My kids are getting the same message in two different places.
Mhm.
Yay, you tend to have more success with that. But if I
Absolutely.
go in and I try to mow down the teacher in front of me because I don't want my child to struggle,
Mhm.
now, again, this is the reasonable struggles. If there are bad things happening, by all means, break out the John Deere and plow them down.
And go to town, right?
Pull them down. Dig a ditch, put them in it. I don't care. Right? I get that. If it's a really bad thing, but sometimes we got to stop and ask ourselves, is this a really bad thing?
Right.
If it's not, then maybe we need to take a breath, take a step back, and say, okay, how can I help my child cope and move forward?
Mhm.
Because when they feel like they can cope and they can move forward, our
Mhm.
job is a job well done.
Right.
So that's what I
I love that.
advocate all the time. So if it's a small struggle, take it on with your child, but in a support capacity.
Mhm.
You should be the comfy chair behind them. So if they're going to fall, you're there to scoop them up and
Right.
be a safe, soft space for them. But if they don't need you, then they can keep moving forward.
And I love that perspective, especially coming from from the perspective of a mom with profound of a child with profound needs, where there's going to come a day where you're not able to do some of that for him, right? And there are times now that may be happening, right? Like he's not able to do it yet in this job environment, and so you are able to step in, but he's got to develop those skills, because for the day and the time that you're not there to support him.
Mhm.
And I would argue that if it's applicable for a kiddo who is nonverbal and has an array of difficulties, then it's every bit as true for families that with kids that don't have quite as many or quite as significant challenges.
Mm-hmm. And again,
So,
pick one. Don't pick them all at the same time. Pick one challenge. Work through them one at a time. Remember that our kids' prefrontal cortexes are not fully developed. This is where reasoning exists. Cause and effect. It's here. And our children are not fully there yet. They cannot see things the way we do as adults. They are not physically capable. So our job is to help arm them with the strategies and tools they need, so that as they're growing and their brain is growing, we want to fill that brain with the most amazing things, strategies, tips, the feeling of confidence. I can solve problems.
right.
I can help myself. I can learn new things. I can do hard things, right? And if we do it for them, the message they receive is, I can't.
Yep.
So as parents, it's so important that we help our children with those reasonable struggles of young adulthood. That we help them step into it. They're going to fight you on it. They're not going to be very pleasant, especially teenagers. They're definitely not going to be very pleasant about it. Right? And so we really have to have some strategies for timeouts, whether that's one parent takes the first shift and second parent takes the second shift, or you literally have arrange for a sleepover for your kids, so you can have some friends in and just be like, oh my God, I want to pull my hair out, right? Find some coping strategies to help you stay in perspective.
Sure, yeah.
Also, put in mind those thoughts. Like, I always think, what are we meant to learn from this? What do I want my boys to learn? And it isn't just, the ABCs or multiplication tables. It's also about those soft skills of interacting with the world, of dealing with people, of problem solving. Those skills will help my children exponentially in their adult lives. So how can I get behind and support them? How can I be an ally to the other people they're working with in whatever form, whether that's at his workplace or in the case of my older son, I mean, most people with a neurotypical kid probably aren't super involved in their children's work life, I hope, because you don't need to be. They're good.
Right.
So, thinking about it from that perspective, our job is to work ourselves out of a job. So pick something, a thing, work with your child on it until you feel like they've got it.
Right.
Then pick the next thing.
Right.
One at a time, for as long as it takes. It takes a while because they're growing and developing. And again, hormones are raging and, like all the other things. You wake up and think, what happened to my child? Who is this alien right here? Like,
absolutely.
What? Yeah. You were nice yesterday.
Awesome. All right. Well, Michelle, you and I could chat all day. We have established this before today's conversation. So I want to say thank you. And again, to folks who are listening, Michelle has offered her time today in support of the Parentween Foundation. Our mission is to help bridge the gap between families' budgets and the help that the families need. And so if you got some nuggets out of this, or you got some insights that you're like, hey, that's really valuable, say thank you to Michelle, if you would, by going to the link that I just posted and make a donation. That goes directly to her tracking link, if you will. And what we've invited our presenters or our speakers to do is we've invited them to share about these. And as a little extra incentive, we've said, hey, if you're the speaker who helps us raise the most money individually, we will donate 20% of your donations to a nonprofit, a family-focused nonprofit of their choice. And so, Michelle, you chose 4 Paws for Ability. Can you chat a little bit about that organization?
I sure can, because we've had personal experience with them. 4 Paws for Ability trains service animals, service dogs, to work with multiply disabled children and veterans who are dealing with, in the case of my son, multiple disabilities. But for veterans, it can be things like emotional support and or physical support if they have had physical challenges, PTSD, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
They're a pretty exceptional organization. Our service dog has been with us now, I want to say 9 years. And he is extraordinary. He's here now. He's a pretty chill, quiet guy, but he does amazing things for my son and our family. And it has actually given my son more freedom, more strategies, more skills. It's been able to allow us to do more as a family by having him. So I highly encourage people, if you would like to have your money go somewhere that you know it's actually helping people, these
Mhm.
guys are it.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, thank you. Thank you. What I am going to make sure to do is put all of Michelle's contact information right here in the chat so that you can see it. It is in our YouTube description as well as our LinkedIn and Facebook event descriptions. And as always, if you want to reach out to Michelle, you can find her through me. I'm Clarissa at parenttwainconnection.com. Michelle, thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait till our next conversation.
You bet. Me either. I love you.
I love you too, Michelle. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.